The reason for this video is really just to share my frustration on the types of conversations we've been having as a country. I'm not going to pretend to know much about the inner workings of the government or what we should do about the border crisis if we consider it to be a crisis, or what we should do about abortion, whether it should be legalized or illegalized. None of that really matters if we can't agree on the most basic principles of the country. And at the moment, it seems we're having a really hard time at that. We're not able to have a conversation with someone who has a political different leaning without the conversation completely derailing to the point where families are being torn apart by ideological differences. I remember it was quite similar after the 2016 election, but unfortunately, we haven't gotten better at being able to communicate with each other. And in fact, it seems things have gotten worse. In my estimation, the root of the problem is quite clear, and it's that we're not taking the time to engage with the strongest points that the other side has to make. We're finding their weakest points, breaking it down, and then shoving their faces in it. And both sides are all too eager to do this. The problem with that, as we know from dealing with people on an individual level, is that if you don't give people a voice, if you don't give them the space to air out their concerns and earnestly try to engage with those concerns and try to compromise wherever is appropriate, what's going to end up happening is that resentment is inevitable. And we're doing this on a large scale. It's like we have a leaking boat, and instead of us focusing on the most pressing concerns, which have to do with the very fabric of the country, we instead focus on minutia. We're fighting over who gets to steer the boat, we're fighting over who gets into the boat, and meanwhile the boat is taking on more and more water. We make trouble where there is no trouble. We point out mistakes where there is no mistakes, and we ignore the real concerns that are actually worth contending with. I don't know if politics has always been this way in this country, and perhaps every generation feels like this time it's worse than before. I mean, the history books is rife with all kinds of divisive periods in our history. We did have a civil war after all. But this is the problem that I think a lot of people aren't recognizing, is the potential for something that devastating. The path that we're on right now seems like exactly what would lead to such an outcome. We can't simply vilify an entire half of the country. We can't blog them on Facebook and just pretend as though they don't exist and hope that the problem somehow disappears because of our failure to have a conversation. It's simply not sustainable, and it all comes back to having better conversations on an individual level. If we cannot put our egos aside and exercise some humility in realizing that we don't have all the answers. Nobody has all the answers. And our beliefs are just as valid to us as the next person's. We're never going to come to any conclusion, and things are only going to get worse from here. It starts with giving people a more charitable reason for why they want the things that they want. We all have reasons why we support one agenda or the other. And these reasons are not often rooted in some malevolence against other people. Most people are not out to try to kill other people or trying to, make other people's lives more miserable or incur suffering on other people. That is usually not the goal. And that should not be our first interpretation of why people want what they want. So we can perhaps start from there. We can give them a chance to express their genuine concerns, and we can all contribute to the pool of ideas that are being contended with. Because all of these ideas have some merit and they all have some flaws, and we can all help each other in figuring these things out. I know this might all sound idealistic, it might sound like a pipe dream, but again, I don't think we have any options here. If we do not get a handle on this, I think we're really headed to a bad place, and I don't think I'm fear-mongering when I say that. I know that deep down, we all know that this is not sustainable. We need to get a grip on the situation. And it starts with the people that are closest to us, the people who have different ideas. If we can't listen to them with the differences that they have in political beliefs, then we're sure not going to be able to listen to some stranger who we don't care about. So perhaps we can start with that and gradually broaden our tolerance for more and more people. Because again, this is simply not sustainable, and we all know it. They say Rome was not built in a day, but neither did it fall in a day. And we seem to be headed that route if we do not get a handle on our conversations. Because when people feel like they're not able to have a conversation anymore, they resort to violence. We can only ignore each other for so long before we feel that burning desire to finally take some action, as we've been seeing from all kinds of incidents that has happened in the past several years. It's really that simple, and we need to do better. Let's try to focus on what really matters here. Let's set our differences aside because they are completely insignificant when compared to the breakdown in conversation, which is the gaping hole in the sinking ship.